Hello?
Hello, is that Mr. Hussain?
It is, yes. Hello, how are you, Sean?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. I'm sorry for missing your call yesterday. I did get your voicemail today to give you a call back today around 2:30, 3 o'clock. Is it a good time to speak?
Yes, it is, because you did send me an email confirming that you'll be calling at 3, so I was aware of your call.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So, right, we'll obviously go to your questions, but I'll just deal with some security questions first, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So just confirm the solicitors that the complaints against.
Burke Niazi Solicitors.
Thank you. And your email address.
fatahbegum@gmail.com.
Thank you. And your full name.
Sajjad Hussain.
Thank you very much. So just as a reminder as well, Mr. Hussain, our calls are recorded, but mainly for feedback and quality purposes, okay. Now, I have actually managed to speak to the data protection team regarding your questions, so I can pass on that information to you, but would you rather go through any of your questions you've got for me regarding the evidence request now?
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, if you can remind me, when was the last time we had a conversation? What date was that?
It was on the 14th of April, I think, when we last spoke.
Okay, all right. Was that a Thursday?
Let me check the diary. I'm sure it was a Friday.
Okay, all right. And I was expecting, first of all, I mean, yeah, I think it was it was a Friday the 14th, and then you didn't get back to us until when did you send the request?
I sent the evidence request out on the 28th, so last Friday.
Yeah, yeah. So I was expecting your evidence request the following week. Can I ask why there was a delay?
Yeah, of course. I did say it would take potentially a couple of weeks. I would try and get it out within the week, but
Okay, all
it
right.
may take a couple of weeks. It is a substantial document, as I'm sure you're aware, because you've gone through it yourself. Normal complaints we normally deal with, a low complexity. This is a high complexity complaint. So obviously, it does take time to put the document together. I was also unexpectedly out of the office for a couple of days.
Okay.
Obviously, that did impact me in terms of timescale. But that document's with you and it's with
Yes.
the firm now.
Yes.
So obviously, I'll wait for that to come back.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I mean, like I said, I just wanted to know what the delay was, and that's fine. Now, when you say it's complexity, is it? Can you just explain to me why is it complex? Is it because the number of complaints that I've raised? Because there's like 20 complaints.
Yeah, of course. So obviously, this is what we say complex, but it is purely down to the fact that it is a lot of complaints. There are 20 complaint points. That is more unusual than what we normally see for complaints. But obviously, every case is completely different. Every case has different complaint points. So it's not an issue there are 20 complaints, but obviously, as you can appreciate, when we're creating documents or reviewing anything, it is going to take obviously additional time. We say it's complex, but it's more to do with the volume and size of the complaint.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to get clarity on what the term complex means. It's complex in the sense it's not it's complex in the sense that this voluminous, not in the sense that it's like those like complex in the sense that it's like a difficult issue. I mean, it wouldn't be complex if I had made like one or two complaints.
No, so again, when I say complex it's that your complaint covers a lot of issues. It's a lot of different issues that you've raised for
I understand.
investigation. Whereas sometimes, it could just be some people come to complaints for one matter or two issues.
Okay, all
but
right.
with there being such a we say complex, but again, as you'll appreciate with the documents you receive, it's the volume and it's the multiple issues of the complaint.
Yes, and
but obviously that won't impact our investigation, just time that it takes to review things.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Sean, for clarifying that, and I have a better understanding of what where we are now. With regards to the requests, can I just ask what communication have you had with the solicitors firm since we last spoke?
So since we've last spoke, I did ask them, because obviously you mentioned about sharing their responses to the premature complaints. I have contacted them to let them know that you're taking the premature complaints forward, so to expect my evidence request and that there will be 20 points of complaints. So I've informed them of that. I've also asked their written permission to see if we can share the premature responses by writing, because normally we need their permission. Now, they haven't responded to me, so I've still made the evidence request as I would yourself. I'm still waiting for them to confirm back that they've received that. Obviously, I do kind of set a reminder to say, we are expecting your evidence to be submitted, or if they have any questions, to get in touch with us. But obviously, in terms of sharing the premature responses, I did speak to the data protection team, and what they've come back and advised is that you would have to submit if the firm don't give their written permission, and it might be that they just ignore that point, then you can submit a subject access request with us through our website, and the firm will have to review each correspondence to see if they can share it with you.
Which firm will have to review it?
So if you put a subject access request into us at the Legal Ombudsman, saying that you want to see the correspondence that the firm and me have had, regarding your premature complaints, then the data protection team will go through all our communications and they will look to see if they can share that with you. But that's a request that obviously you'll have to deal with the information team. Now, I can make that request for you, or you can do it directly with the information team.
I think, in our previous conversations, I have made you aware that I will. It's normal. It's my normal policy whenever dealing with any kind of professional organization that I make the subject access request. And this, I find myself just, going through this same situation that I did with the Burke Niazi solicitors. I explained to them that I often make a SAR request once everything's concluded with. As you can appreciate, if I make a SAR request now and then, I would necessarily require to make another SAR request when the case's file is closed. And I've also informed you that obviously the calls you mentioned to me are recorded, which I would be asking a copy of. So at this moment in time, I don't think it's advisable to make a SAR request. And the other thing I wanted to ask is that because often what's happened is that it's not my data, is it? It's relating to myself. And so I just want, there's some, like I said, I make a lot of SAR requests, and sometimes the organization says, well, we're not prepared to provide you with data, like information that's not originating from you, or is in this context, anything that Burke Niazi has shared with you would ideally still be my data, wouldn't it? I mean, it's still in relation to myself. It's not their data, is it? And I just wanted to get clarification upon this, because when you say that the subject access team will then review what they can share and what they can't share, I'm just slightly dubious upon this. It's like why would they why would it need to be redacted? And so did you find any further clarity on this?
Again, I'm not the expert in terms of data protection. All I can advise you is that our data team has just said that if you want to make that request, you would have to put it with them. And every case is different, so they would need to review it. I unfortunately can't give you any specific guidance. You would have to contact our data team for that.
Would I be able to speak to them directly? But like I said, I don't think at this stage is advisable for me to make a subject access request. Simply, it might be conceived as vexatious, and that's another thing I've come across if I'm making too many requests. And remember, the only reason that I'm making this request, presently, Sian, is this, that they're not providing me with any information. Now, as you are aware, I have taken this matter to the Information Commissioner's office. I've had several outgoing issues with them, but they've quite clearly and categorically stated to me that under these circumstances, they would not be looking to take any action against the firm, even if they had failed. And all they can do is really advise them. And in my experience with the ICO, that often seems to be the position, that they seem to be acting more as an advisory body. And I've explained that I would be looking to obviously take legal action against the firm, which is my hope or intentions in time. But as it presently stands, obviously I'm allowing time for yourselves and other organizations to go through the formal process. Now, in relation to the information that you've requested, can I just ask, has an equal evidence request been made to the solicitor's firm?
previously explained, so I've gone through each complaint, obviously, set a little bit of a standard of what I would expect to see, what I expect as a reasonable service, so you can understand how I'll be looking at the complaint. And obviously I will request evidence from yourself that could potentially show that this firm was unreasonable. I have made an equal request to the firm, and they will have to provide me evidence to show that their service was reasonable.
Yes.
So it's an equal request, but the idea is you are going to submit evidence to support your complaint and to support that your complaint that the firm's service is unreasonable, whereas the firm will be providing evidence to support that the service was reasonable.
Yes, I understand. Can you understand how I am hampered by the fact that they're not made full disclosure? So, like, for example, the documentations that you're asking for, it's all with the solicitor's firm. Now, I feel slightly apprehensive of providing any documentary disclosure, and I'll be open and transparent with you of the reasons for that is because these documents have already been created at public expense. What I mean by this is that the solicitor's firm is a professional body of a solicitor's firm. Every communication that they've sent out has been remunerated to them at public cost. Any communication that they've received from me has been equally remunerated to them at public cost. It's just about my time and resources, and I don't have access to the emails, which is obviously available to yourselves from them. But you've made the decision that you don't want to ask for everything. I mean, this is one of the problems that I'm having here, is that I've made it quite clear that I won't be providing information that can be sourced from somebody who's already been paid for it. So as you can appreciate, there's a voluminous amount of correspondence that I don't have full access to, and ideally the other party should have provided that. So I mean, I think the best way to proceed would have been to have like what they say is agreed facts, and that's all you're really trying to establish here, is that given the evidence. Now the evidence that they have if I could have that evidence, then obviously I can point that out to yourself. But irrespective, I mean, you've made a request, and it's they have to obviously provide you with that evidence. Now, if they don't provide you with that evidence, like for example, in one of the points you may have asked, they may look to selectively provide you with evidence, however, that would disadvantage me because I know there were other like correspondence that counter that, but I don't have access to that evidence. And so my only issue is that, like I said, if there is any correspondence, they have a copy of them, so they are required to make that disclosure. Now, I understand that previously you've stated that they're not being investigated, but obviously under these circumstances, I have lodged a formal complaint, and it is it's upon them to it's upon them to counter my complaints, not with regards to the evidence. So with regards to the evidence, like I said, I would like to wait for them to provide you with the evidence, and if there's anything that I think is contrary, I'm kind of happy to go through to counter that. But it would be very difficult for me to, as you can appreciate, collate all this emails, because I have I'm limited in my resources. I've got other ongoing issues, whereas this is a professional body whose primary goal and objective or business operations is to gather to get paid for correspondence. So that's where I would be struggling. I mean, to meet your expectations.
Okay, so I'll just run through our process. I understand what you're saying, Miss Sian. I do. It's time for researching on yourself. Now, the way we investigate complaints, what I've advised you is, we're a completely independent party. We're not taking sides. We're completely in the middle here. So this is why we say to complainants, you need to provide evidence to support your complaints, and then the firm needs to provide evidence to support that they gave a reasonable service. So this is why I've made different evidence requests to yourself, because obviously you'll provide different information. Now, I understand what you're saying about the firm, but in terms, you have brought this complaint to our organisation. So any complainants that bring complaints to us as an organisation, we would expect them to provide evidence to support their complaints. And again, I appreciate your comments that you've raised issues with the firm and that you feel we should investigate them. It's not that we're investigating the firm, we're investigating the complaints that you've brought to us. So I appreciate what you're saying, but because because you've brought the complaint to us, we would also expect that you provide evidence and that you would want to commit time and resources because you're asking us to investigate your complaint. Now, what we can do is if you don't provide any evidence and the firm provides me evidence, all I can do is come to my findings based on the firm's evidence. So like you said there, what they may submit is evidence just to show that they provided a reasonable service. If I can't see any other evidence to show that, the contradictions or any other issues, then I'm going to find that the firm's service was reasonable. If there are still gaps and I'm unable to come to my findings and I think, well, the firm haven't provided me enough, you haven't provided me anything, I'll make a further evidence request because obviously I can't come to my findings unless I think, there is enough evidence to base my findings on, because that's what it will all come down to. And then I'll share my findings with you, I'll share my findings with the firm. If you disagree or the firm disagrees, I would then send my case decision out in writing, and that is when I'll provide a copy of the bundle of evidence that I've used in reference to my findings. So I understand where what you've said there, and it might be that you find contradictions in the evidence that perhaps I don't pick up on because you're more privy to the process that took place. But I would expect to kind of see you submit something like, some of your complaints are regarding times that you've communicated, tried to call the firm, tried to email the firm. So I would expect to see those kind of records. But again, if you don't provide anything, I'd just have to go off what the firm provides.
No, Sian, thank you for that clarification. And I'm sorry to interrupt here, but I did not say I won't be providing any evidence. What I did say is I'm struggling to provide. Basically, I would struggle to provide. I think it's prejudicial to me if I provide you with evidence that can be sourced from the solicitor's firm. So, like, for example, if they've sent me a letter, all right, and in defense of my position, I have to then present that letter to you, I would struggle to do so because that information the solicitors have provided and is available. Now, one of the problems is that, in this case, I would be happy to go. It's the aspect of time and resources in collating the information, which the solicitor's firm have systems in place. I think it's highly unreasonable for any member of the public. Now, as you can appreciate, that lay people or civilians are not document managers or document evidence gatherers. The evidence is in the case file. The solicitors have chosen not to disclose the case file to me. Can you understand? So that requires me going through numerous emails and numerous email chronologies and events and putting them together. Now, had the solicitors handed over the case bundle as per the SAR request, then we wouldn't be having this conversation, because I can say, look, here's all the evidence that they've complied to the SAR request, so that all the documents are in there, and obviously it is your job now to go through that case file in collaboration with the complaints that I've raised, and so the evidence is all there. I think that the approach that you've taken is that you're asking for piecemeal evidence from each party, which is effectively what you're asking for is the case file. And I would think that as a minimum, that if the case file was made available to you, rather than the solicitor's firm equally, pulling out certain evidence, certain documents that support them, and refraining from providing documents that counter them. All right. At this moment in time, when that's the problem here. So that I think that is a problem regarding written documentations. Now, in addition to this, obviously, I'm here today to provide you with my evidence, which is audio recordings. Now, as my understanding is, the solicitor's firm were not audio recording our calls, because like we've spoken previously, when I've spoken to you, you've made me aware that the call is being recorded. Now, you have to do that because that's the legislation requires you to do that. As a solicitor's firm, they would know what the legislation is. They've never made me aware of that. So that's information that's not readily available to them, and that's not readily available to you via them, because obviously I was equally auditing or keeping evidence of this. So that's something that I'll be proceeding to do now, is to provide you with that evidence. So I can do that right straight away, but it has to be on the caveat that I don't want the solicitor's firm to be given this information, because the reality is that at some later stage I will be utilizing this particular evidence to take a further legal action against them, and it's not necessary for them to have this information, because if they have this information, they will then be relying upon this evidence to would be relying upon this to basically make up notes or stuff, and I don't believe that they've made up those notes. So for example, if I've rang them on a particular day, that they have come back and said, no, he never rang us up on that day, all right, and or alternatively they're saying that he rang, we know that he rang us up on that day. Well, they have to then provide the evidence, which are notes. What I'm trying to say is that I don't want the solicitor's firm to be privy to the evidence that I'm presenting you with, because that would then could be utilized by them to counter the complaint that I've made. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Sian. I mean, that could be said of the firm as well. The firm provide evidence. We'd have to share with you, so it would only be right, that we share all parties' evidence, because that's how we're going to come to our decision. And it's only fair, for example, if I was to make a decision against the solicitors, that I explain to them why, and that they can see the evidence as to why I'm making the decision. Now, if I can absolutely speak to an ombudsman and see what the position is in regards to not sharing your evidence. But I just want to go back to, what is it that we can do for you and achieve for you in this complaint? In terms of a service complaint, you've already referenced that you want to take the solicitors to court because of their poor service. So rather than use it as a stepping stone, you've already expressed your intention to take them to court. Is that not another route? Is that not a route that you would rather start to take now? Because I'm not sure what we can achieve for you in this complaint.
Okay.
And what is it? Obviously, you've looked at our remedies guidance. So what is it that we can achieve for you in this complaint?
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent and important question. Now, with regards to, I think what needs to be made clear is that you've explained to me that the purpose of your investigation is simply restricted to what kind of service was provided and whether it meets expectations, and your outcome will eventually be that yes, we agree that the service was not adequate, or it was adequate. And if it was not adequate, we would look to, obviously ask the firm to, remunerate you up to a limit to compensate you for, your loss of service. And that is the scope, the full scope of what you are able to do as an ombudsman. Is that correct? Is my assessment of what the expectations would be correct?
Yeah, so our position is that what we say our role is to try and put complainants back in the position they would have been in had the poor service not occurred.
Okay.
If obviously we do find the poor service.
Yes. So my ultimate position is very different to that, because I'm saying that the poor service was not as a result of without malevolence. I'm saying that poor service was as a direct result of malevolence and fraud and corruption and criminality. Now, that's not something that you can investigate. All you can really basically conclude is that yes, there was a poor service, and that's it. But what my perspective is that the poor service was the reason for the poor service was because this was intentional. The intent is that aspect of intent that I'm. Are you still there, Sian? Yep.
Yeah. I'm still here, Mr.
Sorry,
Singh,
I just heard something. So sorry. So from my perspective, I'm trying to establish the reason that there was a poor service. That's not your job, is it? You're not going to say that the reason there was a poor service is because they didn't have the right people, or there's been a governmental change or due to legislations in the legal aid, and it was because of money. That's not your remit, is it? You're not going to give the reasons for why there was a poor service. All you're going to do is that there's an expectation of service, and we feel that under these circumstances, Mr. Hussain is correct, and those expectations have not been met. You're not here to provide any evidence for the reason why the service is not been has been subpar. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to establish, is that under these circumstances, I've been very clear, and obviously my evidence goes to show this, because obviously it was all audio recorded, is that the reason that the holistic approach of why there were numerous failures from, as you can appreciate, from the start in April up until January, and then subsequently from January all the way up to May or June when they eventually put the cost invoice in. So my argument is that the reason for this failure is because of with intentional malevolence, and and the reason for that is that there was a coordinated joint enterprise of which the solicitors had played only an important part, but they were not the only agency involved. My primary position is this: that the reason that we have received a poor service is because formally the solicitors were representing me, and that's what we can only go on what was formal. However, informally they were working to my detriment by colluding and conspiring with the local authority, who was the other party, and also the fact that there was collusion and cooperation from the judiciary, so it's a far wider issue. So with regards to your comments earlier on saying that, well, you've brought the case to us and you've mentioned the fact that you may be looking to take legal action against the solicitors firm, why don't you do that right now or concurrently? What I need to explain is that this is a highly complex issue, and one of the reasons that there's so many complaints with yourself and you're classifying it as complex, and that's why I asked you earlier on, what do you mean by complex? And you've explained to me what you mean by complex is because it was like numerous complaints. What my understanding of complex is because when there are many actors involved in coordinating a joint enterprise effort, which makes it highly complex. So it's far more complex on my part because I'm making the far more serious allegation that my mother was murdered under a joint enterprise spearheaded by the local authority, but involved not only this solicitor's firm, but all the other solicitors involved as well, particularly the official solicitor and primarily the judiciary as well. Now, I understand, Sian, that is outside of the scope of what you can do. So that's not my expectation that you would be able to look all these other things. All I'm here trying to do is provide you with the correct perspective. Can you understand that the evidence that you're going to be presented with can be limited, can be can lead to conclusions, but whatever evidence is presented to you, can you appreciate that there's an element of perspective that needs to be put in place? So for example, if I present you with a A4 page of document written in English, but however I present it to you upside down, it's still the same evidence. However, you will lose perspective because it's not the right way up, or it's a mirror written. I'm just trying to in terms
of I understand what you're saying, Mr. Sian. I understand what you're saying in terms of what you want to achieve in the court. And again, we were in agreement that we can't make those determinations. We both agree on that.
Yes.
But in terms of if we were to find poor service, what could we do that would make this complaint right for you if we were to find poor service?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question as well. What could you do? Well, obviously, I think at this stage, like I said, you've explained to me that you could ask. There's a maximum limit of what you can penalize them for, or ask them to pay me, can't you? There's a limit to that, isn't there?
Yes, that's good. I've previously shared the remedies guidance with you, haven't I? Previously, yes.
So ideally, I mean, Sian, I'm going to be open and transparent with yourself, and I'm going to say that obviously those costs are nowhere near the costs that I'm looking to pursue the authorities for, because obviously, as I repeat myself, is that the local authority have now effectively murdered my mother in their care and custody. I'm obviously pursuing that as well. Obviously, there's the vaccinated her, and that as a consequence of her being vaccinated without a consent or authority, she's now died. I'm having to pursue not only the solicitors firm but the clinical commissioning group. And as you may or may not be aware, they've also changed hands now. They've been reorganized as a care trust. Basically, they've gone through an organizational restructuring. It's obviously the local authority. But just to answer your point quite briefly, ideally, what I would like to in my best case scenario would be that if after, because this matter has not been investigated so far, I would have anticipated that, considering I've made such serious allegations of premeditated murder regarding my mother to the local authority, I would have anticipated that there would have been an inquest. Now, in the inquest, in my mother's inquest, I would have then been in a position to be far more fluid in presenting all the holistic evidence. That's not taken place as yet, and that further goes to evidence to me that there's something seriously wrong here. That obviously my mother died in the care of the local authority. The local authority then were made aware that I've made these allegations of murder, and they've not done anything about it. Effectively, everybody's just basically looking the other way now. This aspect of the solicitors from Burke Niazi is, as I explained, only one component in a highly complex case involving numerous public authorities. So back to answer your question, ideally, the reason that I brought this aspect to yourself is at least to have an opportunity for an independent, purportedly independent party to investigate facts on the ground. Now, what you'll be able to conclude is that, for example, you'll be able to conclude that whether the service has been poor or not. That's all you can conclude. But also, if you find that there is ample evidence presented to you that this is more than just a complaint, this is potential criminality, then I would expect the Ombudsman to equally raise their concerns with a higher authority. For example, if I'm on the call to you today and I mention to you that I'm going to commit an act of terrorism or murder or something like this on the telephone, I would expect yourself to escalate this matter outside of simply our telephone conversation, because that then becomes not just a procedural or civil matter, it becomes a criminal matter. And so when you ask me the question what you would like, I think after being presented with the evidence, which obviously I'm slightly reserved that the solicitors not get this evidence, which would then be, I've not presented this evidence to somebody else, which then can be undermined or backtracked upon. And that's the aspect that concerns me, is that if you've made a position, I'm not backtracking, but obviously given evidence, in my experience, people when presented with that evidence, they look to backtrack and change the story depending on what evidence is being presented. So that's one of the reasons that I was reserved about presenting the evidence.
Just to go back there, Mr. Singh, so the purpose of obviously bringing a complaint to us is for the independent investigation to see if there was poor service. Obviously, we're both in agreement that we're not going to make the determination behind the poor service. The other things, obviously, you've alleged, we're not going to make any of the determination on that. But your point of bringing this complaint to us is in hopes that we do find poor service and that we would report that to a higher authority. It's not. Is that the only way that we can resolve this complaint for you?
Well, with respect, Sian, my mother's died. All right. These people are culprits of my mother's death. All right. I think the aspect of, if you put yourself in my position, what resolution would you want? The resolution I want to make this public, so this doesn't happen to other people. Now, if it's true what I'm alleging, can you understand that members of the public, as lives are put in danger, are they not?
No, I completely agree with it, and I really do have every sympathy about your loss. I really do.
Yes.
I mean, in terms of, we'll leave that there, but in terms of the evidence request that I've made, I acknowledge what you said, that you're saying you don't want the evidence to be shared with the service provider. I mean, when I come to my findings, it wouldn't be shared at that point, but if either of you request a written case decision, I would share all the evidence that's provided by both parties. So what I will do is I will go away, I will try and speak to an ombudsman for their advice to see if there's anything we have in place where we don't have to share the evidence with firms. I will speak with an ombudsman for advice and come back to you on that. And then obviously based on that advice, you can decide, how you want to proceed and what you do want to share with us.
No, no.
But I will come back to you on that, okay?
No, I think from what you've explained to me, I'm going to provide you with the evidence right now. I mean, it's not a problem. Like I said, it's just that I don't want the solicitor's firm to be presented with the evidence to provide them with the ability to backtrack. So what you've explained to me is that my evidence presently that I provide you will not be provided to them, will it? Right now.
Not right now, but what I'm saying is if I use that in my case decision,
Yes.
then that can, when it comes to a case decision, you request, either of you disagree, we can't reach an agreement on your complaint,
Yes.
which is likely from what you've said, in
Yes.
this complaint, then I would share everybody's evidence to say this is how I've come to my decision based on this evidence.
Okay.
So then that would be shared, and both you and the firm would then have a further opportunity to challenge any of the evidence that's been provided, challenge anything that any of my decision that I've come across,
all right.
and I would then look at that. So if there's an opportunity for both parties, once they've reviewed the evidence, to raise concerns. So that's fair on both sides. Either of you can raise that on the evidence provided.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair. But the way that the approach that's being taken is that I think that where I feel that it's slightly discriminatory is because I'm a civilian, I'm a lay person, I'm a member of the public. The same standards do not apply to me that should apply to professionals who are receiving, public funding. That is where I think when you say that, we have to be both equal. The reality is that we're not both equal. The reality is that these are paid professionals doing, using public money to do a public service which is regulated. Can you understand? I'm not the same as. Yes.
I absolutely agree that you're a layperson. I am a layperson. So in terms of what knowledge you should have about the legal system, I absolutely would never hold you to the standards of the firm. You are a layperson. They are legal experts, they are knowledgeable in the legal field. So, in terms of complaints of, advice, should they advise you, etc., I would expect them to offer that advice to you. So I don't expect you to have any legal knowledge whatsoever. I do expect the firm to have that. But we're not looking at that. What we're looking for in terms of evidence, you don't have to provide me any evidence on a professional level. You just have to send me copies of emails or calls that support your points.
Okay.
It's not.
I think there's a misunderstanding here when I say there's that I'm a layperson compared to and you said you're a layperson as well, and I think there's a misunderstanding here. When I say a layperson or a civilian, I'm not a professional. Basically, what I mean that there's a distinction between you and me right now, isn't there? Because I'm a civilian and you're an officer.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand.
That's what the point.
Like I said.
The point,
in terms of investigation, that is how we investigate.
Okay.
We do expect complainants.
Yes,
to
I will, and
that.
I'll provide that evidence to you right now. But what I'm trying to say is that can you understand? As a civilian, and the way I see it, that there's a distinction between a civilian and an officer. You're an officer right now. What do I mean by the word that you're an officer right now? Well, I mean that you're holding an office, you're employed, you're doing a job, you're getting paid for your time. This time here right now, you're getting paid for because it's part of your job, and therefore you have to make me aware that the call is being recorded. The converse standard is not true of me, is it? The converse standard is not true of me. What I mean by that is that I am not being paid for my time. Yes?
No, you've chosen to bring the complaint to us,
right.
and obviously for establishing.
Yes, so I'm not being. So that's the distinction here. That I'm a civilian. I have civil rights, not officer or employment rights. Obviously you're an employee right now. You have a right to be treated in a certain manner by your employers, even by myself. You're getting paid for your time, and that's the same with the solicitors. But conversely, I'm a civilian, and therefore my rights are very different. And so therefore, for example, I've made you in the past aware that my calls are being recorded. But the distinction is that I do not have to make you aware. I can covertly record you without your consent or permission, because I have civil rights, which presently at this moment in time you do not. And so when you said to me, I'm a lay person, I think that you're trying. I'm just trying to help establish that right now at this moment in time, I am a civilian. You are not a civilian. All right. And that's the same distinction between myself and the solicitors firm. They are officers, professionals paid at expense. The same standard of what's required should not be the same. So I feel prejudice in the facts that now we're all of a sudden being treated as equal. But irrespective, Sian, let's just move on from this aspect.
Yeah.
You've made a request. I mean, if what I would like to say is that I will provide you with the evidence right now, and if the other party, I just need to be, if it's going to be provided to the other party, I just need to know when that is, and whether my permission is required or not. And if ideally I would not like it to be disclosed to them, but I understand what you're saying is that once you've made your findings, you're going to be relying on the evidence, and maybe at that stage where the other party may make a request for that evidence, because remember, my evidence is audio, it's not written. So when they make that request, I just want to be informed that they've made that request and whether my permission is being sought. Equally, I'm making a request that any evidence that they've provided to you should be provided to me, because at least I know what evidence they're relying upon.
Okay, so like I said, I will get some advice from one of our ombudsmen just to clarify that, and I will come back to you.
Okay.
All that advice is obviously, like I say, my evidence request is specific regarding each point. So if you do provide audio calls, I'd just appreciate if you could note what times the specific issues or calls. So, for example, if you have an hour's phone call with the firm and only 10 minutes of it is to discuss, a particular complaint, such as, why have you not returned my communications, just note for me in the call recording at what times the specific issue is discussed.
Okay.
But I'll get this advice from the Ombudsman, and I will come back to you, Mr. Sian. It'll be Tuesday now, but I'll try and get the advice tomorrow. Okay.
Okay. Well, can I just provide you with the evidence right now then? Because my intentions of calling you was to have this conversation with you before I provided you with the evidence. So I can provide you with the evidence right now, and what I'll be providing you with is the only documentary evidence I'll be providing you with is that which maybe the solicitors don't have. But are you on your computer right now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a web browser?
Yes.
Okay. So would you be able to type into your web browser tinyurl.com/Burke-Niazi, and that's my evidence.
Sorry, say that again, Mr. Sian.
So if you go into the web browser and you type in where you do normally type in www, don't type www and just type in tinyurl.com. So that's tinyurl.com, and then // Burke, Burke, and Niazi, Niazi.
Okay, and what is this site? Sorry, is this?
Well, this is.
This got you.
Sorry.
So what? Because I'll have to get this cleared through our IT team, because obviously we do have limited access for our work computers. So I'll have to double check this can be accessed through our internet.
Okay, sure.
What is it? Does this call recordings?
So yes, this is basically it's a YouTube playlist of all the call recordings that we've had, which evidences all my oral communication with the firm.
Okay, so in terms of my evidence request, though, Mr. Sian, on each point I have asked for, some additional comments and explanations on each point. I would expect that you would be able to send me that call as a, not necessarily on a YouTube recording, but as MP4, or, find a way to send it to me across, but on each complaint. So when you send it back to us, for example, your first complaint is that the firm didn't make a legal aid application until May 2021, which was 6 weeks after you instructed the firm. I would expect you to come back and say, complaint point 1, this is a call recording where we discussed it. We discussed this between the times of, 20 minutes into the call, and then I can review that information. So what I wouldn't do is go through an entire playlist
Well,
of
I
calls
mean,
to try and pick out evidence.
well, the thing is, the reason I provided you that playlist is one of the things is that you said one of the complaints is that I said I made all these calls and left voice messages with the reception, and that's evident. They say he never called us. So, like I said,
Yeah.
at this moment in time, look, that's that's all my evidence, and obviously how much. I mean, just to make you aware, Sean, that I've spent I think over 7 or 8 hours on the telephone calls speaking to yourself. That those are time and resources that I'm having to allocate into speaking to yourself, and I'm very limited in what kind of, like, what you're asking for me effectively is to pinpoint each one of those pieces of evidence, and I'm just conscious of my ability to do so with the limited resources that I have. I'm basically effectively handing to you my whole case file, and you're asking me to go through it all and pinpoint exactly to each point, and that might be proving a resource intensive activity. Like, for example, all these calls have equally been recorded. Now, if I can hand those calls over to you or somebody else, but for me to, like, pick up a conversation would require me to go through all our conversations in the past, which would prove problematic to me, because that would prove problematic to me
Yeah.
because of a time of constraints on my time and resources which are not being remunerated.
And I appreciate what you're saying, I do, but at the end of the day, Mr. Singh, you have brought this complaint to us, so we would expect, as we do with any complainant, to share the evidence to support their
And
complaint.
I've shared
That's
my
our
evidence.
expectation. That's how we investigate.
Yes.
I
I'm
cannot
just
access it via a YouTube
Sorry?
playlist, and I think I've made it clear as to how we expect the evidence.
Okay.
Now, I can send it to invited, but again, what we'll do is I will get advice from an ombudsman in terms of what can be shared. I can't access YouTube as a point of evidence. I would need the files in some kind of MP4 format that you could send across to me, and again with specific markers of the calls to say when it was discussed. But I will go get advice from an ombudsman in terms of what we can share, like I've already said.
I mean,
and obviously,
sorry to interrupt. Sean, I've gone through this problem many times before. All right, with regards to sending MP3 players, I've sent MP3s. They said, "Oh no, we don't have the technology to do this." So I think there's some questions that need to be asked from your IT staff and the ombudsman regarding my presenting the evidence, because I would just like to say that once again, it's that aspect of my time and resources being taken up. Yes, I've raised a complaint, and I've raised this very serious complaint because I believe that there is murder taking place, and the civilians' lives are being endangered. That's why I'm taking up my time and resources. I'm handing you all the evidence now. With regards to sending you MP3 files, that is causes further problems. So I think would it be fair to say that, considering that I've presented you with my evidence now in the form of a audio playlist, would it be fair to say that we can have another conversation maybe next week when you've spoken to the ombudsman regarding the queries that we raised in this call today, and also with regards to my mechanism of presenting you with evidence?
Yeah, of course we can. Yeah, I will go and speak to an ombudsman in the first instance, and then we can obviously I will come back to you as well.
have you made a note of my playlist, which you said you can't review right now, but you're gonna go to the IT to get IT staff to ensure that that's okay?
Yes, I've got a note of the website. Obviously,
Yes.
I wasn't aware it was a YouTube channel, but now you've told me that it's a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll discuss it again. I think
Yes.
next week.
Yeah, sure.
Mr.
Sure.
Singh, but I don't think we're going to be able to
Okay.
review a total playlist of audio. But we'll discuss it again. I'll speak to an ombudsman in the first instance.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So when can we speak next? Should we say back end of? Because I'm just conscious it's a bank holiday weekend coming up. So should we say back end of next week?
Yeah, I mean, I hope I can speak to an ombudsman tomorrow, but it's likely that it will probably be Tuesday now.
Okay, all right.
So if we say that we pick this call up maybe Thursday or Friday.
Okay, all right. Well, Sian, can I ask, when are the solicitors required to provide you with their comply with their with your evidence request disclosure? What date is that? Do they have to comply?
It's the same date that I've given to
Yes,
yourself.
yes.
If they need further time, and if they give me legitimate reasons why they need further time,
Yes.
then I can give it them. The same as you, if you've said that I need further time to
Yes.
get the evidence together, and
Yes.
it was a reasonable request, I would consider it.
Okay, all right.
But I haven't heard anything back off them as of yet.
Okay, so I think what will be best is that let me just see what dates we're talking about here, because what date is? Let me just see what date we're on. Just give me 1 second. So you've said that you require everything by the 9th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, which is the Tuesday. So I think should we speak next? Because that way we will know whether the other party, the solicitors firm, have complied with your evidence request, or whether they are requesting more time. So do you think we should speak like Wednesday or Thursday next week?
Yeah, that's because I'm hoping to speak to the Ombudsman at least at the latest, hopefully next Tuesday. So I'm happy to see Wednesday or Thursday, whatever the easiest
Yes.
for you, Mr. Sian.
And also, you will then know by Wednesday whether the other party have complied with your evidence request.
Yes, correct. I would have heard back, hopefully, from the firm. I'm looking to obviously chase them up as I would have you had I not heard back, but obviously
Yes.
you have contacted me back in terms of it. So, we do chase them up for,
Yes.
to confirm
Yes.
receipt of it, etc. So I'll know by then, yes.
Yes, I understand why they're being evasive, because obviously they're being evasive because of an underlying guilt. All right, and obviously hence why they've chosen to take the full maximum time and delay this a year later. This matter's not going to go anywhere. Like I said, I've got all the evidence that I need to highlight what they've done. But irrespective, we'll speak again soon, Sian, and wishing you a good bank holiday weekend. I think there's a coronation going on, so hopefully we'll get to speak next week, and we can continue to find a way forward.
Brilliant, yeah. Take care of yourself, Mr. Sian. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for calling. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. So basically, in this call, you can see that they don't want to do any work themselves. I'm sending over the evidence. The evidence now needs to be reviewed by an external party, and that evidence. So they want to pinpoint exactly their arguments and not go through the other stuff. Now there's hours and hours of evidence there that I'm presenting them with. They're basically trying to get me. Because I'm the complainant, basically the standard of evidence or the standard of requirements are same as a criminal case or a formal court proceedings, because obviously I would then have, if everything's written down and black and white, and so there's no room for ambiguity, or because everything's black and white, all right, then that would be like a criminal level, isn't it? And the argument that I was trying to make is that there's no expectation of me to have such levels of evidence, because I'm a civilian. I'm ordinarily, nobody else does what I do, namely record things to such a degree, because obviously I've been fully made aware that there's malevolence taking place by the local authority who have murdered my mother, murdered my brother. So as a policy, I am very, litigious, and being litigious or not being litigious should not have a bearing on the ombudsman. The ombudsman should ideally be relying on, okay, well, fair enough, right, this person's raised the complaints, can we have the case file? All right, so she's not asking for the case file. My case file with the solicitors are a firm who have created a legal case file, which has meant the fact that I could speak to them. They look to represent me. They use public money to create this case file. That is now at public expense. I'm now going to this person, all right, and at a minimum, I should have a copy of my legal case file, so I can say, well, look here, they're pinpointing it to this bit, and however, as you can see from the evidence, I can pinpoint you to this bit. However, the approach that she's taking is that, I want you to give me piecemeal evidence. I want them to give me piecemeal evidence to assist me in making, and to assist me when I don't have to go through all the stuff. And at this moment in time, I should not have to be giving up my more time and resources, where as a legal professional, it should have to go through all the stuff. I mean, given the case file, pinpointing things out leaves room for things to be misinterpreted, different perspectives to be put forward. Basically what they want to do is that, basically what they're saying is that we're asking the solicitor's firm not to give us the case file, look at the complaints that Mr. Hussain has made, and now you cherry pick the evidence that counter his claim. So we're going to allow you to cherry pick the evidence. However, equally, we don't want you to hand over the whole case file to, or we know the fact that you're not handing over the whole case file to Mr. Hussain, so he can equally counter cherry pick what evidence that you're submitting. So it's fully geared towards the solicitors or the professional bodies in order to facilitate their position, in order to advantage them, and for the Ombudsman to say, effectively show on paper that they are doing their job of acting impartial and trying to do everything right. And the reality is that effectively what they want from me is to do the hard work and the hard graft, to go through everything piecemeal. And I'm not in a position to go through everything piecemeal because they're not giving the solicitors are not giving me that information. They're not effectively they're setting me up to fail. And the reason that they're setting me up to fail is because they don't want to have the cold case file. And equally, they'll say, look, I want you to provide MP3s and pinpoint what you said here. That can be taken out of context. I'm not in a position I'm not on the defensive. That's what I'm trying to say is that I'm not on the defensive in order to, order these complaints. I am the complainant. I'm not here to defend complaints. And they're on the defensive. All right, so they can take things out of context and cherry pick events. I'm providing them with a whole call recording that will show the dates and times of the call recordings. You can see that's all there in front of you. You can go through I can point you to the right direction, but for me to, can you understand how they're trying to get me to do all the work now? And I'm just conscious of the fact that I've spent over 7 or 8 hours already on these call recordings. This is another 55 minutes that I've gone onto this call recording. My aims and objectives are to make content. It's not to go through the content to pick out certain key things for your advantage. And the reality is that Burke Niazi solicitors are in a position to do have been caught out doing something criminal. So whereas the Ombudsman were just trying to wish-wash and water down what's going on here, saying, oh well, the solicitors, they made a couple of mistakes, we're going to make these recommendations to them, we uphold what you're saying, and this is what we can remunerate you for your loss of service. I mean, this is just complete rubbish. All right, I have not disclosed the call recording chronology or my video evidence of the call with them, other than to the police. The police, no doubt, are refusing to go through this, but the evidence is there. I mean, for them to say, I could present you with the CCTV recording that I have, and you can look at the particular day yourself. I'm not going to cherry pick things out for you in order to make an argument. And who are you to, be a judge, jury, and executioner? You're there to look at my complaints, and like I said, the way that this is progressing, I quite clearly see some form of discrimination going on, or where things are just effectively being shown to be done rather than being taken seriously. My mother's been murdered. My brother's previously been murdered by the local authority. Nothing's coming of it. Everything's just basically up in the air. No, everything's fine. Just we're chugging along. However, if I, as a civilian, do something like park somewhere or speed somewhere, oh no, you could potentially endanger life. We need to take this seriously. We're going to come down upon you like a ton of bricks. All right. However, conversely, when they've now messed up, murdered my mother and murdered my brother and all the other failures that I'm now highlighting and recording, what they didn't want or what they would not have agreed to is me recording things. So then when it's all on paper, there's only their version of events, only their evidence, and then what they do is with written paper, they doctor the documents. They literally can doctor documents saying, this is what the doctored version is. So they can doctor documents to make it look like anything. They can't doctor call recordings I've had with them because they don't have access to those call recordings. So it's a form of manipulation and coercion by the state or by the state apparatus. Much like these people are now, they're telling me that, we're going to investigate this, but we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, said, I'm willing to cooperate to a degree, but I suspect something. I suspect something afoot here, because obviously they're trying to get me. I've already given up so much of my time and resources. I'm just a complainant. I've complained. All right. It's upon the other party to now have the evidence to counter that to my complaints. That's how an investigation works. If I put a complaint about something, you investigate. An investigation means going through a hell of a lot of material to investigate something. But the reality is that they don't want. There's no emphasis or underlying need to get things are resolved with, or like, because the net outcome is that there's a solicitor's firm, they're doing a job, they're doing a function, which is effectively a service to society. What I'm saying is that they're acting criminal and fraudulent, and it's going to be costing the state or society a lot of money to take them out of commission, and there's one less service available for them to regulate and make money out of. So they're not incentivized to. Basically, the reality is that they are not incentivized to remove malevolence or fraud or corruption. They're not incentivized to remove them because they make their money out of that. Because can you understand that they in this particular example, if the solicitors are found to be so malevolent that they are removed, then nobody else can bring a complaint against them to the Ombudsman. And all as like a business model, not that I'm saying that's what they how it actually works, but can you understand as an aspect of incentivization, they want me to basically. They want me to complain and then be satisfied so that they can get paid to do their job, but effectively not change anything, or not fundamentally change any aspect, and maintain the status quo. And that's what it's fundamentally about, in maintaining the status quo from everybody else, to maintain things as they are, so they can continue to ride the gravy train. And that's what it comes down to. Everybody's milking the system at the expense of the ratepayer, the civilian, and the members of the public, and all the officers are doing this to justify their own job, their own profession, their own pay packets over and above what they're meant to be doing, which is obviously serving and safeguarding members of the public.